When I think the word hood, I think of a person, a place, and perhaps even a thing. I'm Sir Creepsta, and welcome to Muhlenberg County Ghost Stories from the Hood. Tonight's tale of terror is entitled The Old Lady in the Apron. Back when I was a kid growing up in the hood, it was commonplace to see our parents and other grown-up women wearing aprons all the time. I would often see my mama wearing hers whenever she was in the kitchen preparing the daily meals for our family. I would also notice that my grandparents did the exact same thing whenever we went by to pay them a visit. This was typical with all of my friends' parents and grandparents as well. So seeing a woman wearing an apron was a very common sight to me. Tonight's tale of terror addresses this exact subject in a supernatural kind of way. So sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and be terrified by yet another Muhlenberg County ghost story from the hood. The year that I'm about to talk about was around 1975. At the time, I was a teenager growing up in the hood. I, like many of my family and friends, was addicted to sports of all kinds. Because of this addiction, I'd find myself going to the park on a daily basis trying to improve upon my skills with my main love, which happened to be basketball. I'd spend hours at a time there with my cousins and my other peers, playing game after game after game. We'd more often than not find ourselves playing basketball from dusk till dawn, primarily because it was something that we all seemed to have a genuine passion for. But back then, a motto amongst all of us kids was that no matter what you were doing or how much fun you were having doing it, you would better have your butt home before the street lights came on, or else. So, believe me, in order to avoid a good old-fashioned butt whipping, we all gave our best effort to do exactly that. But regardless of how hard you tried to keep to this commitment, there were times that you just couldn't, simply because you were having so much fun in what you were doing at the time. Before you would realize how late it was, you would hear the sounds of the street lights starting to warm up before completely coming on. The story that I'm about to share with you happens to be one of those rare times that we didn't notice how late it had gotten, and the street lights did what they were designed to do, which is come on when the darkness started to set in. Once we heard the sounds of the lights warming up, the basketball stopped bouncing, and we all looked at one another, said our goodbyes, and struck out running towards our respective houses. The house that I lived in at the time was a straight shot from Gish Park once you got onto the road that led into the park itself. All I had to do was cross the street located beside the St. James Church and then continue down it for about 100 yards and I would be home. On this particular night, I recall running out of the park when I heard my mama's voice calling for me to get my butt home. I would make it home just in time enough to avoid a good old butt whipping. That I had been a few minutes late would have definitely been the outcome. Once I arrived home, I went straight into the bathroom to wash up because it was almost supper time and Mom had already had the table set for myself and the rest of my family to sit down and have our evening meal. After sitting down at the table for a couple of minutes or so, I thought that I heard a faint knock at the front door. At first seeing that I had the appetite for a bear, I simply ignored the knock and proceeded to dig into the fine meal that my mama had prepared for all of us. But as I sat there chowing down, I could still hear the faint knocks at the door. I took a moment and looked around at my parents as well as my brother and sister, and I immediately noticed that none of them appeared to have even noticed the knocking at the door as they continued to chow down on their meal. After being there at the kitchen table for an additional 10 minutes or so, everyone had finished their supper and had all taken their place to the kitchen sink for Mama to wash them. Daddy then went into their bedroom, my sister went into hers, and me and my brother likewise did the same thing. I'd probably only been there in our bedroom for about 5 minutes or so when I noticed once again that I thought I heard a faint knock at the front door. At first I just ignored it, seeing that no one else had seemed to even notice it, and continued to flick through the 5 channels we had on our television, trying to find something for my brother and I to watch. After getting bored of flicking through the channels, I finally settled for watching some Sanford and Son, seeing that it was a show that my brother and I both enjoyed watching. About midway through the show, yet again I heard a faint tapping coming from the front door, only this time it seemed to have gotten a little louder than it did at first. So loud, in fact, that I had no choice, seeing that no one else even budged, but to get up and go to the door to see what was knocking on it at this time of night. I slowly made my way to the living room, and then to the door. The front door of our home had a curtain in front of the glass part of it, so I turned on the porch light, pulled back the curtain, and to my surprise, right in front of me was a little old lady wearing a blue apron, with her face pressed up against the glass, knocking on the door like crazy. The look upon her face would have sent chills down anyone's spine. It was a look of pure evil. Bear in mind, I had never laid eyes on this woman my entire life, so I just turned and called out to Mama to come to the door to see who this little old lady was. It only took Mama a few seconds to get to the door. While she was coming my way, I had started back into my bedroom. I'll never forget the sound of my mama's voice when she yelled out for me to bring my black behind back into the living room, saying all along that I needed to stop the darn lying because ain't nobody out here on the front porch knocking on the door this time of night. At that point, I jumped up off my bed and ran back into the living room. I pulled back the curtains while all along trying to describe to Mama what I'd witnessed on the porch only a few minutes earlier, only proving my mama right, for to my surprise, there was no one on the front porch knocking on the door. As night turned to day, I would end up spending the whole time telling myself how I knew for a fact that I indeed did see a creepy old lady dressed in a blue apron knocking at our door. The next day was pretty much so a repeat of the day before, which involved me going to the park and playing some basketball all day, then making it home before the streetlights came on. We had all had our supper, and afterwards me and my brother had settled down in our bedroom to once again enjoy a little Sanford and Son, when out of nowhere I heard a faint knock at the front door. The knocking continued for another minute or so, with apparently no one else in the house hearing it but me. As I sat in my room trying to block out the knocking, it only got louder. Only this time I would hear my mama yelling out for someone to go into the living room and to see who it was knocking at the door this time of night. Seeing that no one was going to even budge, I reluctantly went into the living room, pulled back the curtains, and there she was, with her wicked face planted against the glass on the front storm door. I turned and called out to Mama to come to the door because the old woman in an apron is back again. At this point, I turned and walked away, heading to my bedroom. It didn't take Mama long to get into the living room. Once she did, she pulled back the curtain, and to her surprise, no one was there. I overheard Mama saying to herself that I know I heard somebody knocking. So out of curiosity, she turned on the porch light, opened the door, and bravely went outside. Mama wasn't gone long. When she got back inside the house, she had a strange, emotionless look up on her face. It was as if she had seen a ghost. I asked my mama if she had seen whoever it was that had been knocking at the door, and she quietly said in a very low tone, "No." Then she went on to tell me that after she went outside, that she did a complete walk around of the entire house, only to see no one. Then she told me that she walked out to the edge of the driveway, looked across the railroad tracks, and then up the gravel road leading to the St. James Church. At that point, she told me that she felt something brush up against her body, at the same time smelling a strange odor that reminded her of how some of the older people she knew smelled back in those times. I didn't know what she had meant by that, but I continued to listen to what Mama was telling me. She said that when she turned around, to see what had brushed up against her, that she saw nothing or no one, and that immediately chills went up and down her entire body. The next day, while I was out playing pitch and catch with my brother, I would overhear my mama telling my granny Lou about what had went on with me the past couple of days with the old woman in the blue apron, and what she had experienced for herself just the night before. Granny would tell Mama the name of the woman whom I had seen, and that the woman had long passed away, that it had to have been her spirit that I saw. From that moment on, I was scared to death to be out past dark while we lived in that house. And thanks to my daddy, we would move away from that house about a year later. As time went on, I never saw the old lady in the blue apron again, but that doesn't diminish any of my beliefs that she's still out there somewhere roaming the hoods of Central City. So, if you're ever out at night near the St. James Church, and you just happen to stumble upon an old lady wearing a blue apron knocking on the door of someone's home that lives near there, beware, for it just might be the blue apron lady paying some unknowing soul a nightly visit. I'm Sir Creepsta, and until next time, stay terrified.